We're looking at my 1984 300D, which also has some sporadic and intermittent heater problems. You know, the heat just is not consistent. And, you know, people get online and they read about this unit right here, the monovalve, and they say, okay, it's probably the monovalve. And, you know, that might be true, but it's not the only issue. And that's what I want to cover here, is just an overview of some of the other issues you might have to deal with if you're trying to get your heater, I'm talking specifically the heat function of your climate control, to work consistently. When you set the dial to 70, it stays there. You set it to 60 or 80, it's not moving all over the place. So if this monovalve is not functioning properly, it could be the signal coming from the panel. Your panel is not working properly, so it may not be the monovalve. The monovalve could be sticking, it could have a torn diaphragm in there. This is definitely something you want to consider troubleshooting and dealing with if you're chasing that heater problem like so many of us are in these old Mercedes-Benz. And so after testing and inspecting your Bosch monovalve, you find out it's no good. And then you find out they're no longer available. You can't buy them new. And I do not recommend the aftermarket units or even the repair kits. I've had so many problems. We've had so many reports telling us these things don't work at all. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, that we just stopped selling all that aftermarket stuff for these Bosch monovalves. So I recommend, if you're having monovalve problems, that you just go ahead and install the new Klima heater control valve. This is a very easy installation in this car. It just requires draining about 1 gallon of coolant and unhooking the hoses. It's a straight plug-in, a straight drop-in. Plugs right into the original hoses. The wiring plugs right in and you're ready to go. You'll be really impressed with the operation of this new valve. One of the things that has impressed me the most is its rapid response time when you go from hot to cold. It's really quite amazing. Here you can see on my right is the factory monovalve assembly, and on my left is the new Klima monovalve assembly, which is a direct bolt-in. Notice the housing nipples are in the same location, and the plug is the same. The bracket top assembly is the same where the bolts go. So this is just a matter of plugging this back into the hoses, tightening the clamps and putting those bolts back in and plugging it in. But I want to show you something else in the engine compartment that you need to check, and you need to be aware of what it can do if it's not working properly. This is your auxiliary electric water pump. That's right, it is a water pump, just a little bitty one. In the W123, it's located down in this area. In the W126, it's located behind the false firewall. But these little pumps, you can imagine how many years they've been running, and most of them don't work, and people don't know they're not working. You have to be aware that if this is not running, it provides an obstruction. To test to see whether this pump is operating, you're going to need some sort of an external 12-volt power source. You can use a couple jumper leads from a battery. You can use a booster. I have a power probe here, which will allow me to apply 12 volts to the plug that goes directly into this motor. So I'm going to reach down in here, unsnap that plug from that little bracket, and you can see some of these are really hard to get apart. You might even find corrosion on the contacts. But I'm going to pry this apart. Yeah, look at that. We see a little bit of corrosion. And in the female end of the plug, look at how corroded that is. So I'm going to have to clean that out when I'm done testing and put a little bit of silicone dielectric grease in there to eliminate the future problem of corrosion. All right, now we'll take the power probe. We'll hook up this jumper to the ground, and then I'm going to apply 12-volt power. You have to kind of listen closely to see whether or not it's spinning. And that one's humming. You can also put your hand on it. I'm going to put my fingers right on the pump. If it's spinning, you'll be able to feel it vibrate. I can feel the vibration. So this one's spinning. This test only will let you determine whether the pump is running. It's not going to let you know whether the signal is good. And we won't get into that in this video. Let's just say you finished testing your auxiliary water pump and you find it's not running. broken. Or maybe you've noticed a lot of wetness and dripping down here, so you know it's leaking. So you go online to try to buy a new Bosch auxiliary water pump for your old W123, W126, R107 monovalve heater system, and you find out, oh, no longer available, no longer made. You can't get these. So what are you going to do? Try to find a good used original Bosch pump. Now I have about a half a dozen of these left that I've tested, and they're good pumps, and who knows how long they're going to last. But that is an option. You can replace it with a good used one. Now we can offer you the newer high performance pump that came out on the newer models. You notice it's a little bit bigger and the outflow input nipples are larger and the wiring's different. But I do now have a kit that will help you install this. This is not a difficult DIY job. And when you install this newer pump, since you have higher output, you're going to get better heat performance and stability both at idle and at very high freeway speeds. I'm going to recommend that everyone that uses this monovalve system, whether it be an R107, a W123, a W126, it's a real good idea to get a fuse in here, so if this motor ever overloads or seizes, it's not going to damage your sensitive climate control panel inside the car. Now I supply two fuses in my kit, a 1 amp and a 2 amp fuse. I recommend you start out with a 1 amp fuse, and if it wants to blow that fuse, you can go to a 2 amp, but that's max. Use a 2 amp fuse. If it blows the 2 amp fuse, you've got too much load coming from the motor on this auxiliary water pump, and you'll have to fix or replace it. There is another area of this climate control system that needs attention, and I believe it's the one that's most often neglected, and that's this right here. Some of you may wonder, well, what is that? That is a sensor. It's a temperature sensor for the climate control, and you have air moving between the heater blower motor up through the here and into the cabin. So this is what's going to send the right signal to the climate control to maintain the heat. Now, I haven't seen a whole lot of problems with this sensor, but there's something else that I see all the time, and I think a lot of people don't even know this exists, but it has to do with the connection between the sensor and the heater blower motor. So in order to gain access to that, you have to remove the glove box. What we're looking for is a plastic tube along the top here that comes from the heater blower motor. Oh, look at that. There it is. Oh, look. Why is there nothing there? Look what I found behind the glove box. Now, this is a foam tube to go from this end of the hose right here up under the dash to the nipple on that temperature sensor. When this deteriorates and falls off, you have no airflow connection between the heater blower motor and the temperature sensor, and your temperature in your car will probably hunt, and that means it won't be stable. So don't we just love this old foam? I think every late 1981 to 85 123 need to have their glove boxes removed and that hose inspected. Look at this lovely stuff. This is what we pulled out of the 85 wagon. It was kind of intact, but it wasn't going to be intact for long. So if this doesn't make you a believer in inspecting that hose, I don't know what will. The 380SL has that same situation as the W123. Up inside the glove box, when you pull it out, you're going to find a hose. Now there you can see it. Look at how that started to disintegrate. We'll try to pull it out and see if we can even show you what it looks like without it all in pieces. We were able to get the foam hose out, but unfortunately we were not able to keep it in one piece. It just kind of crumbled when we took it out. I think this is the best solution here. This is 3/4 inch ID wiring loom. Notice it's not the split type. You don't want the split wire loom. You want the solid one, and you can cut it to the proper length to go between those two nipples under the dash, and you don't have to worry about this rotting anytime in the future. So in the past month and a half, I've developed kits for all these things that plague your heater system in these cars, whether it be the monovalve, the auxiliary water pump, the internal temperature sensor in the car. Just follow the links in the description below this video and it'll take you to every one of these items that I now offer on my website.